In this lesson, we're going to take a look at a really, really popular guitar instrumental, Little Martha, written by Duane Allman. As a matter of fact, the only song credited to only Duane on all the Allman Brothers albums. Of course, he was only on 2.5. But in any case, it's done in an open E tuning. Now, the way I'm getting my guitar into open E is by being an open D and capoing to the 2nd fret. We're going to do the lesson without the capo in open D tuning. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the theory side and in the breakdown and all that kind of stuff. But the song was of course written in as a duet. Or Duane had his arrangement of it sort of dedicated to a girlfriend of his, Dixie, and had it just as this cool little finger-picking song that he did on a dobro, or on a National Steel guitar. You can hear the little banjo-y sound on the album. Again, it appeared on Eat a Peach in 1972, an album that Duane was on half of, or part of, and unfortunately he was killed in the middle of the recording of the album. So some of his stuff is on it, and some of it's, well, a lot of it he's not on, of course. Little Martha. Open D tuning. Now, I've talked a little bit in other lessons about open tunings. Haven't really talked too much specifically about this one yet. But like every other open tuning, an open tuning based around one particular chord, in this case D, has to have all 6 strings tuned to one of the 3 notes in the chord. So you need to know a couple things. You need to know in standard tuning what the guitar is tuned to anyway. That it goes E, A, D, G, B, E. Hopefully you got that. Then you have to know what, well, you can actually find all kinds of electronic things that will do this for you, and you don't even have to know anything about it. But if you want to know more about it, pay attention. So the 3 notes that make up a D chord are, and again, every major chord is made up of 3 notes. 1, 3, and 5 of that major scale. A D major scale goes D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and ends on D. So the 3 notes that make up the chord are D, F sharp, and A. Left hand in Little Martha doesn't really do a lot of stuff that, not a lot of unusual chord shapes, at least not in the first part. There are 3 sections to the song, and in the first section all we're doing is playing notes in harmony based on the melody starts on the 2nd and 3rd, or the 3rd and 4th strings. And we're just going to be adding pairs of notes, your 1st and 2nd fingers for the notes at the 1st and 2nd fret of the 3rd and 4th, and then your 1st and 3rd fingers later on for notes on the a little bit later in the same measure. We have some unusual things going on in the right hand in Little Martha. The first is, it's a finger-picking song, so we're going to be using 3 fingers, but you're usually playing 2 strings at a time, and depending on which 2 they are, you'll be plucking a lot of times with your index and middle finger together, sometimes on the 2nd and the 3rd and 4th strings, even sometimes on the 5th and 4th string. So, get out the tab, or the guitar profile if you have that, and take a look at the beginning. Let's start working our way through this. Now again, in this lesson I'm going to play without a capo in open D tuning, so that all the fret numbers I'm talking about are relative to 0 being 0, which is not the case if I put a capo at the 2nd fret. Everything's relative to 2 being 0. But, so, the intro. 4 measures, just done kind of freely, introducing the themes in the song. Now, one thing that can really add a lot here is if your finger-picking technique has evolved to the point where you can play 3 or 4 notes together, not together, as opposed to, it'll sound much better here to roll those notes. So that technique that I addressed in other lessons, yesterday I think is the main one, the first one that started talking about that, the Beatles tune, McCartney tune. So anyway, so you'll hear me do that a lot, and that technique I address in other places, but it really does take a lot of practice if you haven't got that down already. In the beginning, just loosely we play these pairs of notes that are generally a 1/3 apart. So right now our 4th and 3rd strings are tuned a 1/3 apart. We've got a D and an F sharp there. So that's the opening notes to the melody. I add on a G and an E, and then go to the 2 open 2nd and 3rd strings. Now I did all of that with my index and middle fingers, as I talked about in the right hand close-up, that these two fingers play every adjacent pair of strings except the first and the second string. So when I get to the first and second strings, I'm going to use my middle and ring fingers. So in the intro, we just kind of walk through this slowly. Now, this last pinch is a pinch because this last pair of notes, because the open A in the fifth string is really a bass note there. So that's what we have in that first measure. And you can separate those a little bit too for a little extra color. Now the melody carries on a little bit further. Now, that pair of notes, since they're split, they're not on adjacent strings, I would use my index finger and my ring finger, index on the fourth, ring on the third, on the second. Continues. Back to thumb for this one, for the A and the bass there. Now a double pull off coming up here. So your first and second fingers did all this work, mostly, and then your first and third fingers go to the fourth and fifth strings. These notes are not bass notes. So again, you're going to use your right hand, two fingers for this, no thumb on this, and then your thumb gets in for the last three open notes. That's the intro. Here it is one time kind of slowly. Thumb. Okay, now we get to the main theme, and what we have is a pinch and a double pull off, and for the whole first line, actually for the whole first section, there's a bass note on every beat. Slow it down, my favorite part of many lessons. So I'm going to play this at 68.